Alright, so I was away for a bit, was moving around, so I haven't done the stream for a while. Yeah, but now it sounds like a good time as any to pick it up again. So I'm gonna do quick stream again. I'm still working on this ticketing system that I didn't really move too much with it in the meantime. What's my plan for today is to create some sort of admin section of it where admin user can see individuals users and maybe their events, how many events they have and such stuff. So just to show it off a bit maybe, this is the organizer portal, that's how I called it. This is where people can create events, so we can create some event here with some description and stuff. Yeah, set some price. Right, now we have this awesome event, and we can copy the thing. And then this is how it looks like for the people buying tickets. They can buy a ticket. Ooh, let me fix this. It goes to HTTPS. Otherwise it should be fine. What's wrong with it? Oh right, yeah, because we're running this thing. Right, so we got here, and it's the confirmation page, and then the organizers can see that I just bought a ticket here. And maybe this still works. Ability to print the ticket. Yes, perfect. But right now, what I would like to do is build some sort of admin portal. I guess I'm just going to call it admin portal, where people can see all the users that are using the system, and maybe how many events they have, how many tickets they sold, or just like the revenue, I guess. Yeah, that's the first step. And then maybe I will build like a breakdown where you can click the individual organizers and get their events, and how much people do they have to get there. Yeah. All right. So if that sounds fun, let's check code. Oh yeah, I actually done the backend part already, so we just get to play with the front end this time. Some more. Yeah. So where do we start? So first, we only wanna. We will probably need to adjust this menu, just this menu, and add another link here to admin portal. So let's do that. I think that section is in components, and I have something like navbar. That sounds about right, right? So what do I have here? Okay, so it should show organizer. Let me get rid of this. That's better. So if we need to force it, or is the user is authenticated, because right now at this point we only have admin users that can not admin, sorry, organizer users that can have accounts. So whenever user is authenticated, we know that it's organizer, and we should show the organizer link. But for now on, let's do something similar. Maybe let's call this show organizer link and show admin link. Let's just set it for true for now. we'll have to solve this eventually and do something better here to figure out if we should show the admin link or not. But as of now, let's just show it all the time. Yeah, and just do something very simple, similar to that. I'm gonna do show admin link here. Path to organizer, we want some other path. So let's do path admin. And let's import that one as well. So this is just a constant, so it's just a string that we move to a different file. So there is a single place where all these string values can be found and edited and reviewed and compared. So if I'm gonna add a new one, I know what kind of convention that I'm using and stick to it. So right now we have this. This is the text. So in our case, right now we have 2 organizer portals. We probably don't want that, so let's add another text here, something like the admin portal. And this file is similar concept as before, as with the constants. I just try to put all my text files or all my text letters that will show on the page in one file, so that later I can revisit it or translate it to a different language maybe and use it in a simple way. So that's that. And so now if we check the page, right, we have organizer portal, admin portal. Now this page is obviously not very good. If we check that, it's because this main navbar has some right margin, right? But these guys don't have any margin at all on their own. So maybe let's check it out. How does that work? I have a class name, navbar brand. Yeah. Alright, so I'm using Bootstrap for the CSS library. So then what that does is that you just have like predefined class names that you can assign, and they will give you some CSS attributes on those elements. So I can say margin, right? Probably. Yeah, let's try this. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think it just might be this. Yes, cool. So this just adds a little bit of margin here. Maybe let's do 3 so that we're same margin as the thing above. How does that look like? Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, and then you can see down there that if I press this, I'm gonna go to admin. So if I press this, I'm gonna go admin. But because we didn't write the admin page yet, we just get this default page. That's pretty good. Alright. And then another thing is that we don't want to show this always. Actually, let's create another user. Sorry, I'm just clicking around real quick, but this is Postman. This is hookup. This gives me ability to send API calls towards my backend directly without the front end. So here, for example, this thing that I just opened, right? It's talking with this endpoint. So this is where my backend runs right now, 8080, and there is authentication endpoint where I can send some simple, test data kind of authentication. So if I send this, I will get status here, 201, and I get access token and stuff like that. But I can also create a user, and that might be nice to do, because then, let's do Pavel free here, because then I can test it that it only shows for the admin user, which is my main user. But this user is admin false, so this user will not be admin. That user shouldn't see that admin portal that we're just building right now. So if we send this, alright, we get unauthorized, and that's because we haven't used this token. Now this might be a bit confusing, but when I'm doing this authentication right here, what I get back is this access token. And this access token is this really long string, and then you keep using that for every successful, like every next API call, and then you don't need to use your username and password on every call. That's how it works. Like in the past, we used to put these kind of tokens or similar type of tokens in your cookies, and then your browser would keep the token in the cookie, and whenever request you would set this cookie, and the server would know that it's the authorized users. Nowadays, we mostly put it in your local storage. So if you, I'm authenticated now, right? So what you don't see me doing is every time I refresh page, putting in my username and password. And it works because if you would look here, memory, application maybe, yeah. There's a local storage here, and then here we have ticket flow token, and this is exactly the string we got from here, from the API call. So we get this token, we store it again in your browser here, and then on every next request, we're just gonna take this token and put it in the header of the request. In this case, there are multiple ways to do it, but one of the more common ones is then, if I go here and I set some request like this one maybe, when I'm sending this request to the server, I'm gonna put to my header somewhere, yeah, it might be hidden because of it's kind of secret, right? So it shouldn't be visible, but in the real world you would just put authorization header. I can actually show you in the Postman here. So when we call this, and yeah, I'm using this variable. Let me real quick set it up so that it works. I have different passwords, and some of them are actually secret, so that's why I'm doing it on the other screen. Alright, so what ends up happening is that we're gonna send another header here. Like the Postman kinda hides it from us, but this bearer token, it's the same thing as if we, yeah, right, there's 10 hidden, so we might see it. Yeah, so this authorization header is generated by Postman for us, but it's gonna put in this string that we got from the authorization call, and that's exactly what your browser would do. It takes this string, put it in this header, and on the next request it's gonna just use it, and then the server can use this. And this is JVT token in this case, which is just a name of how is this formatted. This this sequence of numbers and letters. It means something. So if we would go to jvt.io, oh sorry, I'm at jvt.io. put this, you see, these are actually data that are encoded in that string. So our server can take this string right here and get out of this data. And one of them is like timestamps. So to to which time it's still valid. And yeah, some other subject here is the ID of the user. So the server knows exactly what user is using it, and then because the server has access to database, server can check what permissions that user have and all that jazz. Yeah, and it's also we're using some sort of validation mechanism there, where you kind of sign the token. So if somebody would mess it up, like you can here, right? And this actually changes the data. So you would, I don't know how to encode it right now, but you would use a tool for that to actually make it still valid, but change something here, like change the subject to be 5, like a different user. But then, so that the server knows that it's really valid, it checks the signature, and if the signature is not matching, then it's it's broken. It's a little bit more complicated than that. Like the signature is actually used to sign the data. I assume, I would say this is the signed part of it, and you can't fake it easily, or maybe at all. And yeah, so then the server is quite secure in relying on the data that it gets back, because by using the signature, the server can verify that the token, this string, was generated by the server in the first place, that it wasn't changed by anybody. Okay, so that was kind of side explanation. But in any case, now we have this admin portal, and we only want to show it for users that are admins. But then how would you know that user is admin, right? So for that, we need to kind of figure it out. So when we look in our front end here, so we're using Redux for state management, and I guess we have auth user here, and what we store, let's where are the states? Initial state. Alright, so our state is just is authenticated and user ID. So this doesn't work for us, because we also need to know if the user is admin or not. So my plan is to actually get not just user ID, and by the way, that's because when we looked on the JVT token, we saw that we only had user ID. We didn't know, if the user is admin or not at that point. So that's why there is a user ID. But somehow we will need to get like the full user object here, so that we can check out if user is admin or not. You could just store like is admin boolean flag, but I'm thinking maybe it's easier to just store the whole user object, and later we can use it for some other stuff maybe. Now this is red, and that's red because it's supposed to return off state, and off state has a user in it, so we're gonna add that user or null. Needs to be nullable because when we start the application, there isn't any user. We need to do a call to backend, so at the beginning it needs to be null. Yeah. Oh yeah, we have user model here. That's good. So we can use that. Perfect. right? And this part right here is if we get this token. So when I was showing you guys the token in the memory, this line right here, line 7, will look into that memory and figure out, do we have the token there? And if so, then we're going to do something similar as on the website I show you. We're going to parse it. From there we're going to get the subject, which is the user ID, and then store it here. And then in our state, we know that the user is authenticated, and also we know the user ID if we would need it for something. Like, you know, we probably do. When that user creates an event, you want to map that event to the user that is currently using the system. But this token on its own doesn't give us enough information about the user object. So we're just going to set null here. And this is initial state. So this is happening synchronously, meaning that just happens when this whole thing loads. So there are no API calls to the server to verify anything. It just checks on the local data and fills in the starting kind of data that we have. So that's one thing. So now we're going to have user here. And when we're looking at this reducer right here, so we have, we have login user and logout user. Login user, I'm just thinking now, but login user should be able to get the user object when we logged in. Because, yeah, let's go back to Postman. When we do the login call, you see we get access token here, but we also get the user object right here. And here is the isAdmin flag that we're looking for. So that we should change. So whenever we log in, we should get the user here as well. But anyway, when we log out, we just remove the user because there's no user. Right, that makes sense. But for here, we actually need the user, or we can set the user already. But our action being sent here doesn't have user in it. So we need to kind of fix that. So let's do that. So auth action right here can be login or logout action, and login action is defined right here. So it's also going to have user model. Now this is a bit fast maybe, so feel free to stop me and I can explain more. And we also need to redo this part, because right now when we log in, we just send in the user ID, which is not good enough. But I guess the user object has the ID in it as well, so we can only send the user object. Oh, sorry, pressed the wrong button. I'm gonna hide this and this so that it's easier to read. So we can only send the user object here, user model I guess it's called. And then we can just do user ID equals user ID, right? Why you're unhappy here? Okay, but this can be null, but we know it's not null. I think that's how you do it. And then user gets the whole user. So this exclamation mark right here, well, the issue was that user ID can never be null. It can only be a number, I guess. Doesn't make sense. But in any case, this user ID property can be either number or undefined. and this user ID right here, we can see that it can only be numbered. There's no like or null here, right? It can only be a number, because when we logged in, we always have a user ID. So that's why we can put question mark, exclamation mark here to signify that you are sure that in this flow, the ID will always be populated. Another, maybe even better way would be to actually check the ID is not null, and throw exception or something. But just kind of breaking all the rules, and I'm gonna do this. All right. So let's see here. Now it's read here, and here is what we get back. So after we called login, we got login result, and we have access token on this. We set the token, which is, we store it in that memory, and we call this login success, which will change the state of the application. But so far we were just putting the user ID here. But as we change the thing here, we just want to put the whole user. So we can do this. Hopefully that's going to be fine. Yeah. Let's check if it actually compiles or not. Looks like it might not. It seems like it got broken, so let's restart it. Sometimes you just need to restart this React thing, because it just get confused easily. Okay, so now this redux thing, forgot how this works actually. That let's see. Guess you can say state auth, and you see we still have user null here, but you can notice that we already have a user thing here, and that's because we changed the state, but we haven't actually logged in, which is the only place where we change this field in any way. So let's do that. If we log out, we go to organized portal, we should be redirected here. And what was my test account? Ticket flow, I think. Sure, save it. Alright, so this worked. You can see that we have a user object right here, and we can see that it's admin or not, which is great. So this is perfect, and then we could hide this admin portal if it's not admin. But there is still one problem with this, because as we said, on every next login to the page, we're not actually doing the login flow. We're not actually sending username and password to the server as we did right now. So what happens if we just refresh the page? We didn't do login, right? But we restarted all the states and everything got zeroed out. So you get null here. And that's another thing we need to fix. So let's do that. And how we could do that is that basically anytime we have a user ID, but we don't have a user object when we're loading the application, we will send an asynchronous call to the server to kind of get information about user. And when we get that back, we're gonna update the state again, and then update of the state might mean that this link will appear, which is in our case. So I need to remember this bit because I wasn't working on this application for a while. But let me see. So you have app.txt and then there's index.txt. Alright, so here's index.txt. So that's the first file that gets used, right, to anything. And the first line here is configure store, which is gonna set up our state of the whole application. And then we call app component right here. So when we are inside the app, we already have the store configured. So we should be already good to, do stuff with it. For example, in our case, we need to check if we have a user object and user ID. And based on the result of those, we're gonna do something or not. Okay, so now I need to remember more how this works, but right, I think this connector defines what we get out of store, and these are the actions that you can use, I think. Let's check some other component just to make sure. So for example, if we check like fin list here, right, when we call the connect, this is redux stuff, so it's a redux specific thing you need to learn if you want to use redux, but I haven't used redux in a while, so I forgot all of the cool stuff. But right here it seems that we're adding some method call right here, right? This is anonymous method or lambda. These are the parameters we get, so we get the system state, then you can choose what part of the state you're interested in, and then you kind of map it, right, and you return object, which is gonna end in your props, maybe? Yeah, it looks like this, right? Because we return this, events, something, and then when we're rendering this page, we're using, I just saw it somewhere, yeah, here, props, events. So it seems like we can do that. So let's do that in our app thing. Map state. Now we need to define it. Oh, sorry, wrong keyboard. And yeah, they just broke it down, so we can do the same. But let's not complete. So we can say state, and then how was it called? Status something. Yeah. Let's check back there. Don't remember my shortcuts anymore. It's horrible. Yeah, even list here. System state is what we want. And then we get to do something with it. Yeah, sure. And what we really want to do is just return an object where, yeah, Reacts for life, man. So we're thinking about returning the auth part of it, probably, because we want to check two parts of the auth section of the store, which is user ID and the user object. So we're gonna just get the auth here, right? So this looks good, and this should probably work, most likely. Can make it even slightly better, I think. So we can use the destructuring of the object. So we can just say auth here, and then we have local auth variable that kind of carries the auth object. So you could then do just this. But then there's another trick in JavaScript. If you have the same thing as a key and a value, you can just omit the value like this, and it's still going to be a key value, pair, but it's just simpler to write and harder to read, which, you know, is a bad thing. Yeah, and then hopefully we get to have off thing here, which we do, maybe. So let's just now, for fun, print out what we have here. Yeah, of 0 is fun. I've tried to do it once as well. And then the result is very good when you have all the integrations with the authorization providers. That's really neat. I don't know why I didn't do it here. I was just, you know, trying to build your own stuff. It's always the worst case. Alright, so here we get actually the object. You can see that we get user ID and no user here, which is one scenario. When we log in, let's try that again. Right, we can see that we get both user ID and user. And yeah, man, you just raised up my number of, you just doubled the number of my followers. But that's one interesting point, because in this case we don't actually want to fetch a user anymore, because we already have the user right here. So, but in this case we do want to fetch the user. So I guess the logic there is, if we have a user ID but we don't have a user object, in that case, and only in that case, you want to fetch the user from the server. So let's do that. So how we would do that? Because in the React, you run this thing whenever there's a change in whatever state you're depending on in your props, right? But you don't want to run this request and fire this request every time that something is changed. So that's why clever people in React came up with this useEffect call. So basically you're saying, whenever these dependencies, which you send as a second parameter to the call of this useEffect, change, run this code right here. But these things right here are only like method calls that never change. So that means that this is going to be run only for the first time when you load up the page for the first time. So this is really good place to load stuff like that. You just need load events as map props to state. Yeah, I don't know. Map props to state. As I mentioned, I'm a little bit blanking on the whole redux thing. But this is, I think it's called actions, isn't it? Fit it in as object. All right. Yeah, okay. So you're talking about this thing. Right. So we need to define one more for us to kind of load the user. Yeah. Yeah, right. We're doing it right here when we're defining which actions, I guess, you want to use in this specific component. All right. Yeah, that sounds about right. Thank you. So let's check it out. I guess we get this thing from here. event actions, currency actions, so we need new auth action. And currently we have login user and logout user, and we also need load user. Yeah, because what I was doing there is just, let's go back there, is just loading like some sort of stuff that never really changed that much. It's a list of events, list of currencies. In this scenario, I don't need to, reload them unless there's a change. And yeah, I don't need that too much. Perfect. So I'm gonna add one more action here, which is gonna be load user. Where is this action? I got a little bit confused. I guess we need this as well. Right, this is just the string type that that's going to be used later to figure out what actually happened, right, when we changing the state. And this is load user action. And just going to provide user in there. And here we can see the difference between, so this one is a synchronous call, so it actually happens, staying, right in the moment. But this one, login, is actually going to a server and back. So this just kind of triggers the call, and then when we get back the result, we would call this login success method that actually sends the action in and that the reducers uses to update the state. And you can see the await keyword here, and this is asynchronous function. So that means that, when I ran this, it didn't actually, wait it for this. I mean, depends on the call, but when we did the login thing, it doesn't, break the rendering of the page just so that it can log in, I guess. I'm guessing a bit here. Because our thing is asynchronous as well, we're gonna follow this kind of pattern. So load user, and we just need user ID, which is a number. Yeah, and then load user results. To define this API as well, like the load user, and then user ID right here. We don't need to do anything with tokens, and we're just gonna call this load user success. And I guess maybe the whole result will be the user object, right? Ooh. Yeah, let's do that. So this is gonna be user. Maybe, probably. And we might change it, so we'll see. This looks good. We need to define this method now. How is it double C's? So yeah, so this we're gonna rename it with correct spelling, and we want user ID here, which is the number. the auth action is correct. And then we just want the user. Oh, and type, right? We need type. We don't need user ID. We need the load user here thing. Right, and we said that we're gonna call it with the user right here. So we're just gonna get user here, the user model. Yeah, this looks good. Then we don't need this. Oh, you get one squiggly line because I defined it incorrectly here. This should be load user. This looks good. Load user thing we need to define, but let's check it out. Let's actually try it out with the APIs first and see what happens there. I'm gonna save this. I think I have a. Do I have like a get user thing? No. But let's create one. I'm using this very cool thing on the back end, which is it's feathers.js. It's called feathers.js, and it helps you to generate your backend for you. So kind of say, give me a service for users, and it will build up the whole service for you and expose the endpoints for you. But you can still go in and change the code a little bit, change how it behaves. But then all your endpoints are standardized and everything's really nice. So right now I don't need to look because I'm using the same pattern on all the resources or entities that I have in my system. So events, currencies, tickets, users, everything. And it's always slash the resource name, and then if you want to get a single one, then you just do this, which is like the ID of the object that you're looking for. And then maybe it works even, right? We get back the user. If you want to list users, you don't put the ID there, and you get all the users in the system, right? With some pagination even. It's really, really cool. And it's it's open source, I think, and it's free to use. You just kind of use it to build your own things. Highly recommend. But in any case, this is the endpoint we're going to call, and that's the payload we get back, which is exactly what we want, the user object. Right. So then if we go back to off API, so we have a login function here. Let's copy it. I'm going to add load user here. We're just going to get the user ID we set, which is the number. Back we should get the user model. Now the URL is base URL and then user ID right here. I think if you want to have your variables in JavaScript, you do this, right? No? Oh yeah. It's just that I'm messing up the case. Yeah, this looks about that it might work. In our case it's get request, and we don't need this because we don't say any payload. We don't need this, and then I think get is like the default for fetch, isn't it? So we might not need this, but let's try it first. You know what, let's just delete it. because I would forget about it. I think we don't need this. I think this should work. One more thing though, I think I built my own off fetch that actually adds the things. Let's see. Right, I have this off fetch, which is just an extended method that I wrote, and it's calling the standard fetch, but it also adds this header with the authorization with the bearer, so we can authenticate. Hello. Yeah, I actually do work as a software engineer. I'm not usually in the React space, so that's why I'm a little bit slow. And yeah, I do a lot of like Java, I guess, C#, but I'm gonna go more JavaScript in the future. Oh, okay, that's sad to hear. I actually just quit like 2 months ago. I'm gonna switch gig to something else. Oh, Java backend, nice. I was doing that for a while. So are you like doing Spring or Spring Boot or what's the other one? Drop Wizard, right? Yeah, I will switch to. I guess there's a company called Automatic. Yeah, Spring Boot for the win, man. So I'm gonna work for them for a while. See how that goes. It's a fully remote gig, so it's gonna be fun. Spring Boot and Hibernate, right? Yeah. Yeah, because here we're using on the backend we have the Node thing with TypeScript, and there's a Sequelize, I want to say that's the name of the library that maps to the database. Yeah, DevOps is super fun, and what I think is even greater if you can combine those things. Learn a little bit about Docker and a little bit about AWS, how to start it up, and it's super cool. And if you can get into like startup zone, like maybe some co-working space, that's where I'm right now, in the co-working space in my town, and you get to meet some entrepreneurs. And quite often they just need like one person to do everything. So that means you get to learn all the DevOps stuff because you need to. Yeah, yeah, that's the risk. I bet it was a good experience for you as well, even though you didn't pay for it. Yeah, yeah, tend to remember that then. Yeah. So what did you do in AWS? Did you do like EC2 instances or database as well, RDS or something, or some more advanced stuff that I have no idea about? Yeah, it's tricky. I've heard S3 buckets are quite expensive when you're trying to get stuff out of them. That it's, but I guess in your case it was just the storage that you paid for. But yeah, it's fun. Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, do you remember? I was working before in this big company. It's called Klarna. They do like payments and stuff, and they have such a huge AWS bill. Like, wow, that was crazy. Yeah, but they still make money. Yeah. Where are you based? In which country, if I may ask? What kind of pain? I have a bit of allergies nowadays. Maybe that's what you see. Just get itchy all the time. Mm. All right, nice, nice. Yeah, Los Angeles. My friend used to live there, but then he had this kind of visa situation, and with your current president, didn't work out that well. I'm from Czech Republic originally, so middle of Europe, but right now I live in Sweden, and yeah, it's pretty sweet. So, so the friend of mine, he actually got like 30 days notice or something, and he had to leave the country, and he had like a house contract for renting, he had cars, bikes, he had to sell that in 30 days. Crazy stuff. Fun functions? What's that? Do you mean like functional coding, or is that a Swedish thing? That just shows I'm not well integrated yet. Just moved 3 years ago, I think. Oh, alright. Have to check it out. Let me write it down. Fun functions. Alright. Yeah, Sweden's nice. It's really good weather actually. I'm not too much into hot areas. And this is perfect. Oh, thanks. Yeah. Alright. Yeah. Gonna do a bit more coding, I guess. But nice to have some interaction. Yeah. So where were we? Yeah, this is all fetch here. Good. Oh yeah, that one's not ready for no argument thing. I can do this, I guess. So this looks pretty okay. Looks like it might work. Let's see. Yeah, looks good here as well. So I couldn't figure out how to debug JavaScript that well. Like, in Java, so easy, man. Oh, yeah, good question. Yeah, I guess they do a little bit. I've done 2 interviews in Sweden, or more actually. Yeah, a little bit of data abstractions, more algorithms, I guess. And they're trying to do tasks close to what they're doing. So for example, when I was doing interview for Klarna, which is a bank, basically the task was something about algorithms along the lines that you have accounts of users, and then you needed to kind of figure out. It was more like holistics, or what's the word? Like the whole picture kind of approach that you had to, this is your problem. Like, build me a thing to solve something. How would you do that without any money, right? So you don't have AWS, you don't have any cloud provider. You just want to do like quick proof of concept. And then they're testing that you actually know that you can run it on your laptop. But what does it mean that you can run it on your laptop? How do you make it run on your, product owner laptops? Or can you do it without him installing anything? So, that they were trying to hint you towards either using some sort of browser-based technology like JavaScript, just send them index HTML with JavaScript in it, and project manager can open it and it works. And then they would take it from there. So you would scale it up and then put it somewhere, some server. How does you access it on the internet? This kind of thing. Like, how do you make it work so that somebody else from some other part of country can reach your thing? Right? So what does it mean? Put it on the internet and so on. Yeah, But I mean, the algorithms are also kind of interesting, I guess, some of them, because they make you think about complexity a little bit, about what's, time and memory complexity. Those things sometimes come in handy, because right recently I was working on this thing. I'm working in the newspaper business right now, and they were pushing to users, to their apps, some notifications, but there was like massive amount of users they wanted to push for, and then you needed to understand if you write it this way or that way, what's going to be impacted. And then there were another service that was depending on it, and at one point we were too fast for that other service, and then we blocked the whole system. So we had to rethink it and do it more, because we were doing a lot of asynchronous communication, like a lot of parallel streams of data, and that wasn't good. So sometimes even this simple, binary search trees and stuff lets you think about the big O complexity of things, and that's good. Yeah, that's always good. Hash maps for yeah, yeah. I kind of like the sum arrays. What's the name of it? Sum arrays, I think. It's a really neat trick. So if you wanna have a difference between those neighboring, I can't explain it really well, but yeah, look it up. It's called sum arrays, like sum of numbers. But on one iteration you just construct the sum array, and on the second one you can use this array to kind of figure out differences between individual items. It's hard for me to explain, but you get to do sum of two numbers in sequence or three numbers in sequence without actually doing one iteration and another iteration in that iteration by using sum array. I think it's called sum arrays. Maybe. I don't know. But hashmap is great, right? Yeah. In hashmap though, interesting questions in the interview process is how does the hashing algorithm works, and what does it actually do, right? Is hashing algorithm that returns fixed number, like 32 for example, 42, all the time for any input, is that a valid hashing algorithm? The answer is yes, I think. But it's really slow hashing table at that point, because what hashing tables do, you kind of calculate the hash from your input, whatever that is, string or whatever your key is, and then you look into that bucket and you put all the items in the list kind of in that bucket, and then you need to iterate over every item in that bucket and figure out if that's the item you're looking for or not. So if your hashing function would take all the inputs and always give it the same value, the hashing value, the hash value, I guess, 42 for instance, you end up having all your items in the same bucket kinda, and they're gonna be all in one list. So then then your complexity becomes O(n) again, because you need to go through every item. Yeah. Yeah. Did that work? Did you get the job? Confidence is key, right? Just need to go there and say, it's O(1), man. Or woman, of course. Can be woman. Yeah. It was fun times. I was actually part of the interviewing pool for one time. And it was really fun. So I got to annoy people like yourself with the questions that you don't like. Yeah. Yeah, I guess mostly when I did that, there was a combination of those two. Like you got a home quiz or some homework to do, and then yeah, I think then they usually do like a day interview, something like that. But I agree, it's much better to have more close to what you're gonna be doing in the real work kind of test than your whiteboard stuff. For the tech stack, right now I'm leaning towards more JavaScript, I think, because I think the more and more business logic is going to front end nowadays, so React or Angular or something. And then if it's a small team, which is what I prefer, then you would have to maintain your backend and front end. And then if you have the same language, which you can do with JavaScript on both, it's easier to think about. Nah, I'm definitely not front end guy. I mean, I wish, but my skills with the design are horrible. So I came from backend, but I'm trying to learn more about React and the front end stuff, so that I can build the tools like this. This is like a ticketing system, and just building it for local artists, and he wants to sell tickets for these events. Yeah, and well, this is very simple UI, but that's a good gateway design, I guess. It's also of course using like a Bootstrap CSS library. I couldn't figure out that this is a nice color or not, so it's just like defaults of a CSS library. Yeah, but there are some nice things out there that makes you code quite easily. Well, that's pretty cool. 4 days, that's impressive. Yeah, I think I watched some, and I listened to this React podcast. That was pretty cool. So it's not just about React, what they talk about, but it's mostly about React. And yeah, it's really nice to get exposed to this kind of stuff. So are you yourself thinking about going more into front-end stuff? Oh, you mentioned that? You said that you are Java dev, but I also tried Angular briefly. Alright, DevOps, right. Yeah, DevOps fun. So have you checked Terraform already? That's a cool tool for like deployments to cloud providers. That's what I prefer to use if I have an option. I guess there's a cloud formation, I think, which is specific for AWS, but with Terraform you get all the clouds. yeah. Well, you can set up some sort of limits for spending, but as I said before, when you come to this startup scene, people really need somebody who's willing to learn different technologies and to branch out, from backend developer to DevOps and to do a little bit of front end maybe. Yeah, I haven't done much Ansible, but I just stuck all my initialization stuff in like some script that runs at the beginning, but I know it's not that great, but yeah, Ansible sounds cool. I think I've done a bit of research about it, but then I never learned it because I never needed it. That's the biggest thing, I think. If you don't need it and you don't use it, then I lose motivation real quick. Yeah. Well, maybe that's just my issue. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, I actually started the interview. Took like 2 months, I think. The process itself. I mean, was a lot of like homeworks as you mentioned, the home quiz, but it wasn't a quiz. It was like a work. You had to do pull requests, and there was the rest of the team that was reviewing the thing. It was quite fun. Yeah, and then to be honest, the pandemic, it's not that limiting here in Sweden, which is good, I think. But you know, yeah. I guess I shouldn't do political stuff here. Yeah, the job was gonna be nice. I'm looking forward to it. And that wouldn't work that great. I can always, you know, hang out here. And there are some freelance jobs you can do. So yeah. There were some good times when there was. I work in a company, my first gig ever, and they didn't even have a code versioning system, so you didn't do Git. You just changed the code, and that was it. And then copy the file from your computer somewhere on a server. Yeah, it was crazy times, man. Like there was still a staging server and production server, so you would copy it first to staging, then check it there, and then if it was good, you ask somebody who had higher permissions than you to copy it from staging to production. Yeah, well, let me think. What year was it? Oh, it must have been. It's definitely not 90s. Must have been 2000. Yeah, early 2000 maybe. 2005, I want to say. Yeah, right. Yeah, I've done some interviews like that when they ask you to write a code on a whiteboard. That's cool. With all the semicolons and everything, just to make sure everything's in place. Yeah, it's crazy times. It's a very cool industry we're in, I think. It's quite fun. Get to, you know, do a lot of fun stuff. So what does your nickname stands for? Love me some pie. Is it love me some pie? Probably not, right? Like a pie as a cake thingy. Yeah. Okay. What are we doing here? Oh no. Alright, I was about to use the effect, right? To actually load the user, I think. Definitely try to do that. Maybe I can put like not here, but here. Just to see that we're getting a user from. There it works, maybe. And we set an app index. We gonna do this, maybe. And then can I do this? Can I auto-complete it? No. Alright, so right now I just imported the action we defined before in the auth action. And yeah, this line I already forgot how the methods are called, but this one is just like kind of enhancing it, I think, with the dispatcher, and then provides you in the props, so you can use it here. And then right here, you can say something along the lines. Right, and notice that here we're doing the asynchronous handling, right? So it will not stop on this line, it will actually keep going, and these guys will be triggered asynchronously, so they will run, and if they fail, they will, you know, show some error message, which we should do probably in our case as well. And if they succeed, then they just run the whole reduction logic of the redux framework, I guess, and change the state, which may trigger changing some components here and there. So we said that we're going to check if we have user ID but don't have user. So let's console log it just to be sure. And then load user. What? I would assume the TypeScript can this figure out this thing, because we checked that we have that. Maybe I need to do this. No, still not. Yeah, okay. Let's do the same trick as before. The exclamation mark. Yeah, and then I'm gonna add this catching statement so that if something goes wrong. Toast is also a really nice framework. Yeah. Toast is really cool. Yeah, let's try if this works, and then I'm going to show you Toast. Ugh. Yeah, right. Ooh, but that's kind of bad because yeah, what are you gonna do? So it complained before because we're using off here, right? But we but it wasn't in the dependencies, so we had to put it here, and I guess also that applies for the load user, which is fine. But offing, so that will change throughout the calls. So that means we're gonna load these things multiple times. Maybe I should split it to different effects then. Yeah, let's do that. Guess you can do that. Because I don't want to reload events and currencies if the authentication or authorization, I don't know how they're called, as thing changes. Right, so I'm gonna do this. Right? Does this make sense? Maybe? Right? Yeah, I really like the await async thing that JavaScript lets you do. I think they stole it from C# or something. Because that gives you a way out of this. You know, try. No, sorry, what I'm talking about, not try catch blocks. I was talking about these callbacks, like you know, then catch blocks kinda. So you can then just do await on most of things, and it works nice. Okay, So is the compiler happy now? Yeah. That's good. You're gonna fetch user. This is the toast thing. It's the best thing ever. Network response was not okay. This is less cool, but you know, I would never be able to design this kind of cool thing. I have it even here, like when you create a user, create an event or something. They don't have just like red error ones. You can do like green successful ones, and they have these cool features like they don't go away if you have a mouse on it. And I think if you lose, if you click somewhere else, it also stops doing stuff. But anyway, our thing doesn't work for some reason. So what we're saying is get HTTP local and we get 500. So that's not good. So let's check our logs. Guess it fails on the backend. But maybe we should check the requests that we're sending. So there's option call right here. And that's the browser is doing that to make sure that the server can accept the GET request that we want to send here. And we're sending GET request, which is correct, with this path, which is correct. And now I need to figure out what's wrong. Oh yeah, we are sending the authorization here, so it should be fine. Yeah, exactly. 500. Yeah. But when there isn't any backend team, it's still my problem. Yeah, so this is another project which I have, which is like another folder in this project, which is like orchestration, I called it. Has a lot of Terraform stuff here for the actual deployments, because this thing is it's actually live already. It's being tested. But when I'm running a local environment, I just have a local Docker compose. And page not found. What? How come it returns page not found? Oh, I know why, maybe. Did we say, right? We said user, but it's supposed to be users. Oh, I'm not using any Docker, how we call it? Like a Kubernetes or something like that. I just have one EC2 instance in AWS, install Docker Compose on that, and then spin it up, and that's where it lives. I can show you more. Yeah. It's in production here. I don't know how well you know Terraform, but I guess I have database, which is, the managed one, the RDS. Yeah, I think Kubernetes itself is open source, so it's for free, but they also have like a hosted version of it. You need to host that somewhere, and you need multiple servers, I think. You need to like have a master or a slave. I never done that, but yeah. But you can totally do what I've done. So you can just take one EC2 instance. I'm just using the smallest one possible, and costs like really little. And then you install Docker Compose on that machine. Then you get your Docker Compose file in there, and yeah, and then you spin it up, and it runs on that one single machine. It's not reliable. If it's gonna get down, it's gonna go down. But these startup projects, that's fine usually. Yeah, it's a declarative language, so it's a thing of a beauty. Yeah, so here there's a database, which I mentioned is database. There's a S3 bucket for something. Oh yeah, that's just for the Terraform state file. So it remembers which Terraform is there. And then, yeah, server. So when we look at server, it's here. Bunch of passwords that I'm storing in AWS, so I don't have them here in clear text for you to copy. for people to copy. But then I have just like the nano instance, which is really small, but it still works for a few users, or maybe up to 100 users, which is maybe fine. I don't know. So far it was like 5 users using the system, so it's definitely good enough. And then, yeah, so this just says, give me an AWS instance. This is the size, this is the AMA, which is like the base image for it. And then these are the Route 53 records, so that that you have the DNS records, the mapping between your domain name and the IP address. And then I tend to use a lot of these things, but like the template files and file provisioners. But those are not that great if you want to scale it up, but I never needed it before. Because the issue with those is that when the server spins up, your computer is gonna take the files on your hard drive here, copy it on the server, and then run it there. The problem is if you have some sort of auto-scaling group, or you want to have some automatic backup stuff, if those servers goes down and there would be a new server, they don't have anywhere to take the files from. You would have to sort of figure out some S3 logic. Yeah, I don't know how to do that. But anyway, I have this kind of templating files right here in the Bootstrap, where I install all the stuff, like install Docker, you install Docker Compose in this, some other stuff, not that important. And then you have your Docker Compose file, which is just telling you what things you want to start on that machine. So in my case, it's just backend and front end. And then the Bootstrap itself is just do some stuff, and then just Docker Compose upd, and you got it, and it works. Yeah, I think Ansible is a really good tool, but it's this much simpler. It cannot do that much, but for my simple use case, it's pretty good enough, I guess. Yeah, so that's an option. And it's really cost effective because you just have one server there. And if in this AWS free tiers, you have EC2 instance for a year for free, and you have RDS, like the database, for 1 year for free, so you can play around with it and try it out. Yeah, definitely a good thing. Okay, yeah, we said the issue here is because the endpoint is users with s plural in the end. So let's fix that. Here. Or I hope that's the problem. Yeah, it looks like that's the problem. Right, so we get back the user, which is amazing. And if we check this, maybe we even have it in state already. No, we don't. So something somewhere doesn't work still, but we're on our way. That's good. Yeah, but it gets easier, man. I mean, more you learn, it gets easier, I think, because it's all the same. I mean, JavaScript, Java, C#, those are totally different languages, but they're kind of same. I mean, you still have while loops, and you still have if-else. If you try to do some functional programming as well, like, what's the name of that? That I'm blanking. Like a Lisp, like Clojure. That's a cool language. I've seen it used in production, like in the bank that I worked before in Klarna. They just used it in production. But man, that's so many parentheses. It's crazy. Yeah, that's true. It's a bit different concepts. You need to understand how servers work and more about Linux, I guess. So yeah, It's worth it. Totally do it. DevOps is cool. Yeah, I wouldn't imagine myself to be fully DevOps though, because then you get a lot of, I mean, there are some repetitive tasks you need to do, and you don't see your direct value, I think, impacting the customer or person using your system at the end. Like, it's even worse than backend. I remember we were doing this presentation and we were like doing some cool stuff on the backend, but nobody cared. The front-end people always got the glory, kinda. But the DevOps are even worse. They never get mentioned, man. But it's crucial. Somebody needs to do it, right? So. Yeah, right? Yeah. DevOps as well. All right. I think I'm gonna cut it soon because yeah, it's getting a bit late. But maybe I can still figure out how this user, why it doesn't work. So we got the user. Let's try to do it real quick. So this works, you know. Fraction maybe? Yeah, we get user here. Load user success. Let's try this. Oh right, because we never wrote the reducer itself, right? That's the thing. That's the thing. So let's do that real quick. What did I do? Okay, here it is. It's authenticated. True. Do I need to set it up? User ID is, well, whatever that was before. Can I just say this? I can say that. Perfect. And user is our new user. Okay. This looks like my work. All right, it's here. Perfect. That's great. Yeah, thank you so much for interacting with me. It's much more fun if I get to talk to somebody. Yeah, I think I uploaded previous streams on YouTube because somebody asked me to. So I'm gonna do the same with this. But yeah, so there are previous ones there. Yeah, nice talking to you. All right. Anyway, have fun. Good luck with your new gig that you're hopefully gonna score soon. Yeah. Yeah. Bye.